Hello, everybody. Clear my throat. Wait for people to join. I see 3 people on. 4 people on. Let me know if you can hear me. I don't really see my microphone thing going up. So hopefully everyone can hear me. It's always a fear of mine. Hi, Celine. Hello, Denise. Good. Hi, Dorothy. Hey, Sarah. How you doing? All right, Sarah, especially since you have experience dealing with all the stuff we're talking about tonight, go ahead and leave your guys' comments, suggestions, whatever in the chat. This is definitely something that we're talking about that I deal with on an everyday basis. I have something in my dress I just noticed. I have a toddler, so ignore all the stuff in my dress. Hi, Jeannie. But a little update about the baby. I know I have a lot of women that watch the show, and I have a lot of women, you know, obviously some are haters that watch the show, but I have a lot of women that truly care for me and truly care for my family, just as I truly care for you, the ones that truly care for me, not haters. And so I want you guys all to pray for little Hannah. Well, speaking of Hannah, hello, Hannah, and Yvonne, and Amber, Rachel, Jennifer, Sarah. Okay, so here's the plan. I'm just about 38 weeks now, and baby is still breech. So I've been doing everything I could think of. Most of my babies are breech at 35, 36 weeks. So I start implementing things and I get them to turn. Well, she has, but she keeps flipping. So like she'll be head down, then head up, head down, head up. Now this is the longest she's been head up for a couple weeks now. So what we have planned is Wednesday I'm going to go in and they are going to try a version. If you don't know what a version is, it's where they're going to do an ultrasound first to just check cord placement and how she's facing and all that. And then they are going to manually, with their hands from the outside, try to turn her head down. And if that succeeds, they're going to break my water right away, put me into labor, just because I finally got her to flip down. They're afraid she might flip back up because that's just what she's been doing. Obviously, my concern in this is cord issues. Why is she still head up at this point? Sometimes babies want to be because they are tied up in their cord. So, you know, that's something that they're going to be checking the whole time they do it. So I have my fears. That's what made me think of this subject is definitely have my fears about it. So pray that she will flip if she's meant to. Pray that if something is stopping her from flipping, that nothing will be forced, obviously. If I go in and she's head down, I'm going to go ahead and be induced because she's head down and they're afraid she'll flip. But if the version fails, everything else fails, they will send me home and schedule. The only other thing is schedule a C-section for 39 weeks, which would be the following week, right before Thanksgiving. So, you know, just keep me in your prayers. I am to the point mentally and emotionally where I have accepted whatever is going to happen. So I've done my part. I have gone to see Webster Chiropractor. Just went today. I have done spinning babies every day. I have put peppermint oil on the top of my belly, along with gone to sleep with a bag of corn over top her head, trying to get her to turn. I have shined a flashlight, like taken a flashlight and put it up against my belly and shine it all the way down my belly, trying to get her to follow it. I've put a heat pack on the bottom of my belly. I've tried moxibustion. If you've never heard of moxibustion, that's where it's like acupuncture. In a way, it's heat though. You take 2 moxie sticks and you light them and you put them on either side of your little baby toe. And you're supposed to do that a couple times a day. It actually did turn one of my breech babies. Was it Kelly? No, Lana. I did it with Lana because she was breech further along and she turned after doing it a few nights. But It's kind of a pain to do because it smells really bad. So I had to sit out in the freezing cold and do it today outside, because the first time I did it, it smelled at my house really badly. So just pray that God's will is done. I'm not really worried about it now. I'm to the point of acceptance now. So whatever happens, happens. It's 2020. I want her here safely. That's it. It would stink if I had to have a C-section on number 8, but it's 2020. And I have had, and for those of you saying, why don't you try a vaginal breech birth? I have done that before. Abby came up but first, and that was 16 years ago, and I was a lot younger, and we didn't know it, and it just had to happen that way. And thank the Lord, everything turned out okay. I don't think I want to go through that again. I think I would rather have the C-section over going through that again. It was terrifying for me. And there are a lot of things, one mistake that can go wrong with a butt first baby. So I think I'm going to opt for the C-section over trying that again, because I have been down that road and I have done it before. So I know how it is. So we'll see what happens. But all that led into the topic for tonight. And that's why I decided to do dealing with fears and emotions. This is definitely something I have dealt with my entire life. Many people that know me in real life know that I'm not emotional, as far as I don't cry a lot. Everyone knows what I'm thinking all the time, but I'm not sappy. I'm not a super emotional person as far as like feelings or, hugging, things like that. So I'm different in most women in that regard. But when it comes to being very passionate about things, when it comes to having fears and worries in my life, it is definitely something that I have dealt with my entire life. I have an imagination, and I can imagine any scenario happening in any situation. And I've really had to battle letting my life be overcome by worries and fears. And my emotion that I probably show the most, that I've had to battle with, is that of impatience or anger, having a temper, more so that than the crying, sadness, depression. I don't really deal with that part of it, but the not being able to control every situation, anger, different things like that, I've really had to learn to work with. And worries, lots and lots of worries. And as I've gotten older, I've just figured out that so many of my worries I worried about never came to pass, and some did, and all of them are completely out of my control. So there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. So I've learned to just accept things that come along in life. So that's kind of what led me into this subject. Now, please interact on the chat. Questions, if I can answer them. Like I said, I'm a work in progress when it comes to this. I do not have this mastered completely, as my husband would tell you, because when we first got married, especially, I was a hypochondriac. I always thought I was dying of something. I always thought I had some weird disease. And I've gotten a lot better through the years, but one of my daughters, Allie, is just like me when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, but please leave comments, leave questions, leave suggestions for people that maybe are dealing with a lot of emotional things or a lot of fears or worries or whatever. So, fears and emotions are just part of life. They're not necessarily bad in and of themselves, because the Bible tells us a lot about emotion when you look up stuff about emotion. And I have a friend on Facebook that I follow, and I really, really like a lot of her posts. And I'm going to read some of the stuff that she's posted. Probably a little bit. She deals a lot with emotions and feelings and just different things. Her name is Elizabeth, and I follow her, and I really get a lot out of the posts that she does. And I'm going to probably read a couple of them a little bit. Yeah, Sarah, I'm going to get into that. What ways have you found to cope with anxiety or fear? I will definitely get into that for sure. But yeah, the Bible says, obviously, It has verses about emotion. We know Jesus wept, so he felt emotion. And then Ecclesiastes, that to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh. Two big emotions right there. A time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate. Once again, parallel emotions or contrary emotions, a time of war and a time of peace. So obviously, there are different times, different seasons, different times, places for emotions. Emotions are fine to have. But I think as women, we have to be careful because one emotion can take over our life. Fear can take over our life, or anger can take over our life, and patience can take over our life. All these different things can take over our life if we're not careful. So once again, it all comes to balance, knowing when it's okay to display, different emotions and things. So learning that we have some emotions and fears we can control, and learning that there's some things completely out of our control, and learning to let go of those things. So let's go through some emotions that we can control when it comes to different things, such as how we respond. Yeah, Francis, I think we all deal with stuff like this at times. And I didn't even put the one part in there. I'm going to try to remember to get to that. Okay, so emotions that we can control. Okay, so how we respond to situations in our life. So this is a huge one, this responding to situations. And this can be any situation. This can be something that happens on a day-to-day basis with your kids. One of them spills milk. Are we going to explode in anger? Are we going to calmly just have them help us clean it up? How are we going to respond to that? We get to decide that. How we respond to maybe a disagreement with our husband. Are we going to flare out, lash out in anger? Are we going to try to be understanding? How are we going to respond to a situation that comes up with our husband? Are we going to have anger? Or are we going to have patience when it comes to dealing with these? These are all things that are dependent on us. And I know as women, we fail often in this. I fail often in this. And sometimes we just need to, before we respond to a situation, we need to step back and we need to just pause and we need to think about what our reaction is going to be. Okay, does this warrant chewing out my child? Does this warrant freaking out? Or is this something that was an accident? Is this something that, have we told him 5 times in a row, push your cup up, you're going to spill it, push your cup up, you're going to spill it, push your cup up, you're going to spill it, and then he spills it? Well, then, obviously maybe he needs to be chewed out for it. But was this just something where he got excited and he was trying to tell us a story and he flung his cup over? You're going to totally put a damper on his whole story if you freak out on the poor kid. So these are all situations that we have to think about. Step back and think about. We're in control of our emotions and how we respond to things. So, hey, Angeli and Francis, Jessica, Marissa, Kirsten. Is your baby colicky, Kirsten? This was always a colicky time of night for my baby. Yes, Shara, I agree. Stopping and reflecting before reacting is the biggest factor. And it is easy to react before thinking. And I think this is especially true when it comes to dealing with other people. If someone does something to hurt us. In the past, I have lashed out immediately when someone has hurt me. And I've learned through the years that when someone hurts me, I need to take time to think about it. And I need to think about my response before I respond. Because so many times we respond in anger, we're not thinking clearly. But when you have time to just slow down, think about your response instead of just firing off something. And it's so easy now with technology. You can just fire something off instantly. You can react instantly, mad face, whatever. And so it's so much better to just calm down and take a minute to think of your response. And it usually goes a lot better. The one area where I fail at this probably the most is with my husband. And I've learned over the years to be better about this. But you know how it is when you live with someone. It's harder to just take a day to think about it. You're right there with them. So you just fire off a response and you see how fast disagreements can start that way. So you need to really just slow down and think about it. When it comes to situations, are you going to have grace or condemnation? Maybe someone comes to you and they're really struggling. They're depressed. They're having a horrible time in their life. And you're like Job's friends. Well, what sin do you have in your life? That's a horrible thing. Don't ever say that to someone. First of all, the Bible says, judge not lest you be judged. And this judgment that it's talking about is judgment like that. Well, what sin do you have in your life? Because if you automatically think someone is going through a hard time in their life because of some sin, God might hold you to that standard and then judge you off of that same standard. So that when you're going through sin, God might say, well, you judge this person, thought they were going through this sin, so you're going to be, you're going to get the same judgment. So I'm really careful with when people are going through a hard time, throwing that out there, for personal friends and people that I know personally. Obviously, it's a little bit different for like the country as a whole. When you see the abortion and everything that goes on in our country, it's easy to see God's hand of judgment in that. I'm talking more on a personal level, with my personal friends. You have to be really careful. I would be very careful judging other Christians when it comes to things like that. So sometimes people just need grace. They need understanding. They need someone to identify with what they're going through. And instead of trying to one-up their stories with a horrible story of your own, tell them, I don't know what to say. I have no idea. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I can't imagine. I'll be praying for you. Just tell them that instead of condemning. So are you going to show patience or impatience when it comes to situations, such as your children doing something, such as maybe even God giving you an answer about something that you pray for? You really, really want this and you've been praying for it. And, maybe he's trying to stretch your patience. And then are you understanding with situations, or are you harsh? Are you just full of condemnation? Or, we need to try to be more understanding of people. We don't know what other people are going through. Everyone has their own story, and everyone has struggles unique to them in their lives. We're not in a competition to see whose life is the worst or whose life, is the hardest or who's going through a more difficult time. We're all in this together. But we can control our emotions and different things when it comes to how we treat others. We often judge people or judge others based off our hearts and intentions. If you're constantly thinking bad about others, you're probably the problem. If you see, bad intentions behind every single person that comes across your path, if you're suspicious of every single person, if you think every single person is a bad person deep down, then you're probably bad yourself, because that tends to be it. In fact, different times in my life, I've often been hurt by people turning on me. I think I feel it very deeply because I have a hard time turning on my friends. I don't, and I especially don't, if there is a friendship that's ever broken in my life, I don't attack them. I don't go after them. I just let them be. And we kind of go our own ways. And I cannot go from loving someone to hating someone in an instant. I can't turn my emotions off like that. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know. Like I said, it is hard for me because I judge my friends based off how I am in my heart. And my really good friends are the ones that accept me for my flaws and accept me for my shortcomings and love me in spite of myself. And I feel safe with them. I know they're not going to turn on me in an instant. And so when there have been times in the past where people have done that, it's very hurtful. And I try to remember that when I have interactions with people too. I try to remember how hurtful that was and not to do that to other people. So go off of your own, think back to the times in your life when you were hurt by things. And this is one thing I think that I do to try to keep myself from becoming bitter. I don't ever want to become a bitter person. I look at all these opportunities of times I've been hurt as a time to reflect on how I don't want to do that to others, if that makes sense. And I've done that with just different, and you can do this if you're raised in a difficult situation, a difficult home life. Instead of taking that and dwelling on it and becoming bitter about it and letting it eat you up inside, think of it as an opportunity to show you how you don't want to be with your own kids. I've really tried to do that because no parent is perfect and we're all going to have shortcomings. I'm going to fail my kids in some level of degree. My mom failed me in some level of degree. We have a great relationship now, but every parent fails in some level. Every parent is not going to 100% give their kids everything they need. So as an adult, you've got to take that and move on. You've got to gain victory over that. There comes a time in your life where you just have to move on. And so the way I've coped with it is I use that to do the opposite. If I felt like I was lacking in an area growing up, then I try to make sure I don't let my kids be lacking in that area, or I don't lack in that area when it comes to my kids, if that makes sense. The same things with friendship. If I was really hurt by something in a friendship, I really try not to ever do that to my friends. So this is like, I've never studied that. I do study psychology sometimes, but this is just me personally, what's helped me in my life. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't, then sorry. It's one way that I cope with maybe shortcomings that have happened in my life, or hurtful things that have happened with friendships. I try then to not do that to my friends. So learning from character flaws of others affecting me has been a theme for me this year. I think this year it's been for everyone. This year has tested relationships like no other year. I'm going to just be upfront and honest about that. At the beginning of this, I said I did not want this to affect any of my friendships, but throughout the year, it has become such a polarizing thing that it has affected friendships with family, or it's affected family relationships. It has affected friendships, and it's become a very, very polarizing thing. Now, when it comes to other people on the opposite spectrum of beliefs, when it comes to all this stuff, I have tried to remain gracious and graceful, and I'm sure I've failed at times, but I've really, really tried to remain gracious with people because I want people to be gracious with me. I treat others how I want to be treated, and it hasn't always been the case. So, it's just, once again, it's another learning opportunity of how I want, maybe if I was treated badly, I don't want to treat others in that same way. So that is, I don't want to hurt people the same way I've been hurt. So it's more of a learning experience for me. I try to use it as learning instead of turning into bitterness. Just remember that everyone's going through a hard time. We don't know what's on everyone's plates. Some people are super private about what they're going through. Other people are just, here it is every day on Facebook, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm going through. And you have to show grace with both sides. Don't be harsh and cut down and criticize the ones that always seem like they're going through a hard time. To them, it's a big deal. Tell them you're praying for them. Tell them that you understand. The last thing they need Is someone being harsh and critical to them on top of everything else that they're going through? And then for the ones that are more private about it, you know, if you can kind of sense something's going on, just tell them that you're there for them. If they ever want to talk or whatever, you know, let them know that you're there for them. And if they want to open up, eventually they will. So are you welcoming to people, or are you snotty? You know, how is it when people come through your church? When you have new people come through your church, do you welcome? Do you, you know, extend a hand of friendship? Or do you just stay within your little clique of friends? You know, just try to think of how you felt walking through the doors. And I always try to put myself in other people's shoes. You know, if I see someone sitting at a table by themselves, I'll try to sit by them and talk to them, because that's awkward, especially if they're newer and they're, you know, in your church for the first time. Try to put yourself in other people's shoes. But emotions, let's go on to the home. And Sarah said, it also helps to share your feelings about things with your children so they get used to the price process. The price process, can you explain that a little bit? But yes, I think definitely allow your children to talk to you. And I've always been one who has been very big about keeping the lines of communication open with your kids, because once again, it all comes down to having their heart. If they feel like they're a burden, typo, that's what I thought. I'm like, I've never heard of this price process before. If they feel like a burden and like you just want them out of, you know, you just want them out of your hair, then they're not going to want to communicate things with you. So that is why I do my little weekly runs with, I rotate the girls, and we kind of, they get their own, you know, either Starbucks or special meal with me, and then we can talk the whole time and just be together the whole time. And I've always noticed a positive outcome with every trip. Whenever they have the one-on-one time, they're very upbeat for a while after it, very happy and a good mood, because their love tank is full and they got to spend time with me and got to do stuff with me. So that's always something that I've incorporated in my home. But yeah, you can set the thermostat in your home with your emotions. And I'm sure you all know this. We as moms, we set the thermostat. That's why when we often have a bad day, our kids have a bad day too. And I've found that even with babies, when I have a bad day, they're fussy. They can tell that I'm having a bad day. Even as a baby, they can pick up on that. So, you know, a lot of times our kids are going to wake up in a bad mood. And you don't want to let that rub off on you, as hard as it is. So, you know, a lot of times when I see that the day is headed south, try to realign, say, nope, 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 this is not happening. Everyone needs to change their attitude now, you know, because it can go downhill fast when you've got a lot of different kids and different emotions going, and anger and frustration and chaos and impatience. And this one's fighting with this one, and this one's whining for food. And, you know, it can go south very quickly. So set them all down, you know, make them sit there quietly while you get breakfast for everyone, you know, read the Bible, play a song, do something to try to reset the mood. So realize that there will be bad days. Sometimes there's just bad days. The van breaks down and you have to be towed, and you have to sit, you know, at Walmart for 3 hours while they change your tire. That's happened before. And, you know, you have bills that are overdue and your phone's ringing off the hook and your husband needs you to do this for him. Sometimes there's going to be bad days. And there's just nothing you can do about it. So this is where I want to read one of, Angeli, I'm going to read this right now. One of my friends that I follow on Facebook. She posted something today that was so perfect. And it goes along so perfectly with this. Her name is Elizabeth. And this might answer your question, Angeli. She said, how do you switch off the stress that comes from having a bad day so you can get things back on track and not derail the whole day? Now, this one is specifically for like letting your problems end with the day. And Proverbs 24:16 says, "For a just man falleth 7 times and rises up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief." And then she says, "The reason why days have starts and ends is because we absolutely need the ability to try again with a clean slate. Carrying something heavy into the next day robs us of our joy and makes us feel awful. We are supposed to confront the person who has wronged us or angered us before the day's end, because if you don't, you'll have an unsettled feeling or loss of sleep." I'm going to interject something. I firmly believe in this, and this is why I do try to, when a situation comes up, I do try to deal with it. If I have to confront them, like I said, I will take time to think about it. But then when I do, I want it to be done with. I want to confront them. I want it to be over with so I can move on with my life, because I need it to be done and be over with. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. That is my evening prayer I often say before sleep. I thank God that my bad day may be put to rest, and tomorrow I can try again to do my best. I like that outlook. Some people loathe sleep and wish they could experience life devoid of sleep. Not me. But that horrifies me, because it would then be this endless blur of things that I'm unsure of if I'm doing any better, because I'd have nothing to compare my progress to. Thank God for every day being a new opportunity to be the best that I can be. And then Psalms 35, "For his anger endureth but for a moment. In his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." And then Ephesians 4:26, "Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath." We all know that verse. And then Psalms 118:24, "This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." I really like that mindset, though. And then she has a quote on the bottom: "Courage does not always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow." And I think that's why one of my favorite quotes is Anne Shirley, "Tomorrow is fresh with no mistakes." Because we do have starts and ends to days. And sometimes you just have to say, it's been a horrible, bad day. There's this book, is it Alexander and the Horrible, No Good, Bad Day or something? It's a really cute book. He has a horrible day. And sometimes we're just going to have horrible days, Angeli. And we just need to accept that this is not the best day of my life, but tomorrow's going to be better. I'm going to put it to rest tonight. And when I wake up tomorrow, it's going to be better. And I like that mindset. So I definitely think that helps. Exactly, Sheila. His mercies are new every morning. Angeli, when it comes to maybe you've had a stressful morning and you just want the rest of the day to go better, maybe reset, get yourself something that would help. A coffee, get your Bible, read a chapter in Psalms. Tell the Lord, I'm going to think of all the good things that happened today. I'm going to focus on the good things that happen, and then try only to see the good things from that moment on. And then I think that would help really reset your mind and just kind of give you a different perspective as the day goes on. Exactly, Hannah. That's a great saying. The saying, a bad day does not mean that you have a bad life, because we all have bad days. We're all going to have bad days. It does not mean that you have a bad life. And if you think that you have a bad life, you're focusing too much on the negatives of everything. You got to think on the positives in your life. So, our emotions. Okay, so that's setting the atmosphere in the home. Realize bad days will happen. Not everything is sunshine and roses. And if someone on Facebook seems like they have it all together and every single day is great, it's not. They're fooling you. We all have bad days. But how about our emotions towards our husbands when they get home? Okay, because this is, I've often noticed, well, first of all, my husband hates getting home. If I'm in a confrontation with one of the kids, or I'm getting after them, I'm scolding them, or I'm yelling at them, he hates it. So I definitely try to watch out for when he's coming home, because I don't want him walking into that most of the time. Sometimes it's inevitable and you have to deal with situations and it just happens. Most husbands like coming home to a calm home. And I can tell the difference in his mood from when he comes home to a calm home and then when he comes home to a chaotic home. And so try to be aware of how that is, because most men just like a calm, peaceful home. So remember that. Definitely remember that. And then, but how about emotions when things happen in life and we face emotions we've never had? Because obviously life, this is going to happen a lot. And Shara just said it, one of my points. She said, some seasons are easier than others, and that is for sure. And I put as one of my point, realize that there will be different seasons in our life with different emotions. Okay. It's not, life is not just this level emotion our entire life, and we're supposed to be like happy all the time. You know, that's just not how life goes. So there are some different things that come up where we're going to have different emotions, and I kind of wanted to cover those, such as when we have death in our life. Okay. The year of, let's see, it's 2020, 2018 was when, so 1998 was when my dad died. That was a year of death for me, one of my first years. And then that was obviously tough, and I still deal with sadness over that. Yesterday would have been his 66th birthday, or no, what was it? 67th birthday. My mom will be 65, so 67. I think he would have been 67 or 68. And it, you know, the whole day, you kind of just subconsciously know. Like April 6th was the day he died. And some years it hasn't like popped in my mind right on the morning of April 6th, but the whole day I'm just like really down and sad. And I figure out the next day or a couple days later, that was the day my dad died. And it's like subconsciously I know. And we do subconsciously know. But obviously death is going to be hard, and we're going to be going through times of sadness, and it's inevitable. And if you try to stuff down that sadness and not grieve, it will come back to haunt you. And in fact, Elizabeth also did another one that related to crying. And she said, it's interesting to see how crying naturally at the time you want to and need to cry makes you feel better. But repression or denial, using laughter to distract your sadness, makes you feel worse. Ecclesiastes 3:4, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Luke 6:21, blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. John 16:20, ye shall be sorrowful, but your sorrow shall be turned into joy. I love these verses. Ecclesiastes 7:3, sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. Proverbs 14:13, even in laughter the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is heaviness. And then there's a quote, perhaps our eyes need to be washed by our tears once in a while so that we can see life with a clearer view again. And sometimes you just need to cry. And when there's been times of grief in my life, I'm not a huge crier in front of people. That's not how I grieve, but I grieve in private. And I can tell when I'm on the very edge. When you could tell you're on the edge, just go ahead and let it out. My method is just going and taking a shower and just letting it all out in the shower. Or at night, you know, late at night when you're laying in bed, that's when all the thoughts and the emotions hit me personally. And that's when I do my mourning and my grieving. But there are going to be times when one of my best friends, Kelly, died. It was every night for months, for a long time. And then, you know, that sadness gets better little by little. Then it goes to maybe weekly. And now, you know, I can't go back and read. I have all the text messages we used to send each other. And I can't go back and read them without crying. So if I feel like, okay, I'm really missing her, I really need to cry, you know, then I'll just find time to go by myself and get those out, look at pictures of her, read the messages, and you do feel better, you know, once you have that release of emotions. Jesus wept. There's absolutely nothing shameful in crying. And as women, I feel like it's better to just confront that head on, realize that we need that release and allow it to happen. than just trying to shove it all down, because it will erupt eventually, whether that comes out through anger or, just a breakdown, a complete breakdown. So we need to confront these emotions head on and deal with them instead of just trying to, bury it. So how about life-changing events? A big move, baby, change of job. We have a lady in our church. They just did all 3 in the matter of a month or 2. They had 3 life-changing events. Her husband changed jobs, they moved here, and she had a baby. So that's a lot of stress. And I feel like she dealt with it very well, but it is stressful. It is very, very stressful. Realize that is a season. It will be over. So just try not to lose it when you're going through it. How about a miscarriage? Miscarriages are tough. You need to emotionally deal with them before you move on. You need to grieve. You need to take time to cry over that precious life that was lost, and accept help. Accept help that friends offer you, meals, comfort, a shoulder to cry on. You're not as strong as you think you are. And sometimes you need to accept help from other people. So just remember, when you're coming through situations like that, you definitely need to. Yes, getting married is another life-changing event for sure. Lots of emotions going into marriage. How about postpartum? We have so many emotions we deal with postpartum. I was just telling the kids on the way home, I was telling them, I love having the baby, but I do not look forward to the first week. After I get home, my emotions and my hormones crash. And if I do not stay ahead of it, I get very depressed that first month. So I have to be very careful. I have to make sure that I am drinking enough. I am taking my vitamins. I am, something caught in my throat, sorry. Make sure that I am doing what I need to do to stay ahead of that, because I have not dealt with that in the past, and it was bad. I dealt with a lot of postpartum stuff. So those first few days after coming home are my toughest. I kind of feel out of control of everything. I feel like I'm in over my head. And this has only happened with like the last 4 pregnancies. It didn't really happen when I was younger. It's only been since I've been older. Pregnancy in general, since I have been closer to 40, has been tough. And I have talked to my friends that are my age about this, and they agree. The anxiety and the fears are real. And whether it comes to just having panic attacks in the middle of the night, that's never happened, but it has with these last 2 pregnancies. It's just a bunch of hormones and emotions going on. So when that happens, and it has a few times with this one, I just lay there and I start quoting Bible verses to myself, and I start praying, and that usually helps me calm down. But it is something that you have to get ahead of and not let overtake you or consume you, and recognize that there is an issue, that you need to address. So I think when we recognize that there are issues and we address it, that really helps a lot, instead of just being in denial or stuffing it down or trying to ignore it. Face it, head on. So postpartum is a big time when you need to be very watchful about that, because postpartum depression is real, and you can overdo it physically. You can overdo it emotionally and really put yourself in a world of hurt. I had it bad after Allie. That was the first time I had ever had it. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know a lot about it. And her whole first year, I really dealt with a lot of emotional things that now I know what to be aware of. So for me, the pregnancy emotional issues, it started, my last 2 have been really bad. I've really dealt with a lot of fear and anxiety with my last 2 pregnancies. Let's see, and I'm 39. So probably I would say from 35 and on. But with Allie, and she's 10, so I would have been only right at 30, when I had her. But that was when I dealt with my most, as far as postpartum. That was the first time I ever dealt with postpartum issues, was after Allie. But with the fear and the anxiety and the actual panic attacks, I feel like I've had a couple of them. very slight. I mean, it was just my heart racing, and mainly my heart racing and just feeling like I was suffocating, kind of very, very slight, only lasted 4 or 5 minutes, but just the last 2 pregnancies. So maybe 36 and up, something like that. But I will tell you, pregnancy gets harder in every aspect as you get older. Physically, emotionally, mentally, I believe it really, really gets, yeah, see, Sarah agrees with me. I had a lot of anxiety with my last pregnancy at 38, and I never dealt with anxiety before, but it's never fully gone away since then. I hadn't either. I've never had anxiety in my life before. Before, just as far as like your heart racing, your palms sweating, different things like that. And I don't know if it's a result of we're getting closer to menopause and our hormones are fluctuating, and there's a lot of stuff that we got to deal with. So yeah, I know, Kirsten, it gets harder. I'm not going to say it gets easier in that aspect. I feel like things were easier. I don't know. Things were easier physically and emotionally when I was younger. Now as you get older, things do get harder physically and emotionally. It comes with the territory. Yes, the M word. And then Rachel said, postpartum definitely got worse for me after each baby. I also think it has to do with taking care of a newborn on top of the other littles. My emotions are high when I have little sleep. That is a huge trigger for me. One of my love languages is sleep. And so when I don't get sleep and I'm tired, it's a huge trigger for me. And I've seen that happens with a lot of women. And then Sarah said, I feel like life changes are just more of life. There isn't really a lot of hardship for me in change. It's just life moving along. I think it depends on what kind of change. If it's a change that you embrace, then it's, your mind does better with adapting to that. If it's a change that you reject, such as maybe you don't want to move, but your husband does, or you have to downsize because your finances took a hit, or, there is a death in the family, some kind of change like that, I feel like our mind and heart rebels a little bit more against that. So, yeah. Financial problems, things like that. So, yeah. And then Kirsten said, this is my first baby who doesn't sleep, but she doesn't cry much either. Sleep. I've had 2 babies who did not sleep. That's Abby and Kelly. So I'm really praying that this baby sleeps. And Abby and Kelly were also my fussiest. They cried the most too. So it's good that she doesn't cry a lot, but when they don't sleep, that's hard too. And then Natasha said, I've been hurt in my life. I've been betrayed by my own supposed good friends. When I was in middle school, I've been bullied. I'm sorry. Take that learning, the bullying, learn from that and try to maybe in your own life incorporate it that you'll never do that to someone else. I feel like we do need hard times in our life to help us grow sometimes, and to kind of teach us how to react to different situations, because it's been the hard times in my life that have defined my character. And if you look through the Bible, it is the hard times that are defining for people, and it really shows what they're made out of. So I don't think every hard time is bad for you. I think hard times are good in a sense if you learn from them, and if you don't become bitter from them. If you learn from them and you treat others in your life better than that as a result of it, then ultimately that's going to help more people, you going through that hard time. So, but I'm sorry that you went through that. That's never fun. So how do we deal with all these things? Yes, exactly. We have to rely on the Lord more going through hard times for sure. But how do we deal with all these things without allowing them to overtake every minute of our lives? Because I have seen a lot of women that are defined by their circumstances, or they're defined by things that happen to them, and it's all they can talk about. They have baggage in their life, and they use that as an excuse to never gain victory over things in their life. They use it as an excuse to lash out at people in their life, to never get close to people in their life. They hold everyone off at a distance because they don't trust anyone. Everyone's out to get them. Everyone's the bad person. How do we take these bad situations and deal with them? And my number one thing when you're going through hard times, you have to take time to grieve. I feel like in this culture we live in, when there is a death or some horrible circumstance, it's like, okay, you can have a week to grieve about it, but after that, you got to move on. It takes a lot longer than a week to get through something very life-changing and monumental in your life. So take time to grieve, cry, get angry, do what you need to do, but don't ignore your very real, intense emotions. You're going to have very real, intense emotions. Now, one thing that I've been careful about, and I try not to do this because I know that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. I've never tried to lash out at God and wonder why he was doing this, because I see stories throughout the Bible where good people went through horrible times. It's just, we live in a sin-fallen world, and there's curses in this world. And as Christians, we're going to suffer along with the non-Christians, but we have God to help us through it. And so knowing that God was my number one help and my constant and my peace, I haven't lashed out at him when bad things have happened. I've cried out for him to help me get through them, and for him to carry me and for him to help me deal with things. And he's given me peace when I didn't think there was any peace to be found, so he's always been the one that I go to first and cry out to and beg him to carry me through it. So recognize that you have emotions, deal with them so you can move on. It's not going to help to deny that they're there. Realize that there is a time to grieve, but eventually it will get easier with each passing day. And it's like you're in a storm or in this choppy sea. And at first you feel like you're just drowning and there's just waves everywhere and you don't know how you're going to make it through it. And then as the storm starts abating a little bit, the waves get less. They're still there, but they get less. And you can kind of finally tread water. And you feel like you can finally keep your head above water. And then eventually it's pretty calm. You'll have a wave here, a wave there that you have to deal with, but it's pretty calm. And then that's just kind of how life calms out. Life goes on, and God wants you to live a free and fulfilling life. He wants you to live a calm life. So realize there are going to be those stormy times where you feel like you're drowning, but he's always there to lift you up, and it will calm down eventually. So Cassie said, grieving is number one. I tried for a long time to be so hard for everyone, putting my own emotion in the back, and all that did was make things worse. Exactly. You have to face it. You have to grieve. It will eventually come out, is what I'm saying. I've been through a lot of grief in my own life, and it will eventually come out if you don't deal with it. But when I cried and gave my issues to the Lord, it truly helped me a lot. It does. It truly does. Acknowledge that you have those, an occasional tsunami. Sometimes we do. Definitely. Jessica said, someone once told me after I told her about something that had happened to me that she forgot that I'd been through things too. It was a comment that stung, but also showed that I don't dwell on things that have happened to me, and I thank God for making me this way. So maybe she thinks that you see the positive because you don't talk about all the bad things in your life all the time. You see more of the positive. So that's good. Rejoice in the thought of heaven. Heaven is one of the things that has helped me most. Knowing that I'm going to see my dad again, knowing that I'm going to see the 2 babies I lost again, knowing that I'm going to see Kelly again, my friend Kelly, knowing that I'm going to see all these people that I've loved, my grandparents and my husband's grandparents and people that have gone on before us. It's very, if you're not a Christian, I don't know how you do it. If you're an atheist and you don't believe in God and believe in heaven, I don't know how you do it, because it does bring such a peace to those of us who have lost loved ones, and immerse yourself in the Bible and the promises of God. You have to. Psalms, Proverbs, amazing books. This is all stuff that I do to cope with bad things that happen in my life or real emotions that come. So, but how about dealing with fears? I'm just going to go over some fears really quickly. We are almost out of time. So, what about real fears? Okay, when you're faced with a sickness, when, like Cassie, you have a daughter that has real handicaps and real needs, and eventually she's going to be going to the Lord, in heaven. What about those fears in our life? What about the fears of getting pregnant again, after you've lost a child? These are huge fears. These are real legitimate fears. How about when you go through a traumatic event? When you're facing a big challenge in life, when you have a fear of pain, when you have, something coming up, when you have all these real fears going on in your life, how do you deal with it? I want to hear how some of you guys deal with it. For me, I have to, number one, take a couple days, realize that this is a real fear. I'm going to let myself be scared a couple days. This is what I did last week with this pregnancy I'm going through now, with her being breech. Okay, we have a problem. We might need to do something differently than originally planned. And I like to be in control of things. So when a situation comes into my life where I'm not in control of things, it throws me for a loop. I don't like it. And I have to battle with fears and doubts over that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to let myself freak out for a day or two. Okay. I'm just going to worry about it, whatever. After this time frame, after 2 days, I'm done. I'm done worrying about it. And I'm going to do what I can in this situation, such as breech. I'm going to do this exercise. I'm going to do this exercise. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to figure out, I'm going to get ahead of the game to figure out what my choices are. Once those 2 days are up for freaking out, I'm done. I'm not going to freak out about it anymore. I'm done. Okay. So now I'm just going to accept whatever happens. And this is how I deal with the fears in my life. I realize there are some irrational fears, such as fear of my kids dying. I do not want that to overtake me. I don't want to make my kids live in a bubble because I'm terrified something's going to happen to them. So I really have to take the bull by the horns, because my imagination can go wild. I have 2 drivers now. Abby's almost 16. She's going to be our 3rd driver. And believe me, when you have drivers in the home, you thought you were scared of your 2-year-old getting hurt. When you got drivers out on the road, it's a whole new ball game. So you really have to learn mind over matter. You have to learn to really conquer those fears. You just can't. You can't keep them in bubble wrap, for the rest of their life. They're going to have to grow up and learn to drive and all these things. So you have to just conquer them. You have to, not stress out and worry about them, because it will consume your life, and it's not good for you either. It can cause stomach problems. It can cause health problems. It can cause so many problems that happen. So mind over matter, irrational fear of bad things happening all the time, fear of losing friends. That's not something you want to be afraid about all the time. For me, I just invest, and I'm the best friend I can be to my friends. And I don't sit around worrying, does this person like me? Does this person not like me? You kind of know who the ones are that really like you and who don't. You know who the ones are that you can form a relationship with and don't. So don't put the time into those that you feel like they just would rather not be around you. So don't sit around worrying about it. So Cassie said, the fear was overwhelming and the emotions are a huge roller coaster, but then I think the Lord's plan is perfect, and he knew Leah's beginning and end before she was here. And now with this baby, I have all the emotions and fears, but I have to just rest in the Lord. I let myself cry and take my emotion, but then I have to move on. There's nothing I can do. God's plan is perfect. Exactly. And I think that's just the point of acceptance I'm talking about. Realize that you do have fears and emotions, but then you just come to a place of acceptance where you know it's completely out of your control. You're not the one knitting that baby in your womb. God is. God had a plan for Leah in her life, and he knew that it would touch other people's lives. And he had a perfect plan for her life, and she lived her life, and he took her home. And now he's knitting another baby in your womb, and he has a plan for that baby's life too. And I believe you've done well with just acknowledging that you have emotions, accepting them, and then moving on. So we're praying for you. We're praying for this new baby. And I hope to have you on. I hope to have Cassie on to talk about little Leah and everything. So I'm hoping with this next year to have her on. So look forward for a guest. So, and then Sarah said, you know who your real friends are on moving day. Well, that makes me feel good because my husband helps people move all the time. So I guess he's a true friend. That's funny. Yeah, you probably will cry, Cassie, but that's okay. It's okay to cry in different situations. It is definitely okay. And that's what we've been talking about. I need to practice what I preach, but I do. I just don't cry in front of people. I don't like crying in front of people, but I do cry in private. I realize that we all need to cry at times. We all have fears of, or we all have different, grief that builds up and things. So we all need to let it go. So I do in private. So definitely. But then there's, fear of failure, fear of every little crazy minute, minute thing happening in your life. And this used to be me. I mean, seriously, guys, when we first got married, I was so afraid of someone breaking in my home and murdering me because that happens all the time, I slept when my husband would go to work in the morning. I would put a crowbar under his pillow because, if a guy breaks in, I'm going to fight him off with a crowbar. But that was my thinking at 20 years old. So I put a crowbar under his pillow. And one time I ran to go jump in bed, and the sharp edge of the crowbar split my knee open. And my husband wasn't even compassionate. He's like, that's what you get for being a psycho. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. I'm bleeding and you don't even care. He's like, well, stop being a psycho. So, I don't know what I would have done with that crowbar. I probably would have been beat to death with it, but that was how irrational my fears were when we first got married. So I've come a long ways now, most of the time. I mean, I check to make sure the doors are locked before I go to bed, but then that's about it. So I've definitely gotten over that fear. We didn't have a gun at that time. I think we might have had a rifle at that time. We have guns now. Maybe that's why I'm not as fearful now. So we definitely have guns now. But I don't think we didn't have a handgun back then. I know that for sure. But I think we only had a rifle, and I didn't know how to shoot that thing. So I used a crowbar. I don't even know where I got the crowbar, but that's funny. Ouch. That would hurt to jump off your bed and land on a nail. So we all learn. I've definitely come a lot farther than when I was first married. But I still deal with fears and emotions and bad things happening. I don't practice shooting regularly. I need to. So see, Jennifer, I used to be the same way. She said, I used to make Cameron take me to my parents' house when he worked midnights, and I would sleep on their couch because I was terrified of being alone overnight. I used to be the same way. I'm not that way anymore. And, maybe you just need to stop watching Criminal Minds. I love criminal shows and I love true crime shows. And maybe that was part of my problem. It was in my mind too much. But I can actually watch stuff like that now without it really affecting me. So, but I definitely see my daughter, Allie, headed that same route. So I've kind of got to nix some stuff with her and try to teach her this and get ahead of the game. But end with a couple verses, what time I'm afraid I will trust in thee. I used to say this all the time when I was a little girl, and I would have fears and I would be scared of storms or scared of my parents dying. I would lay there in bed. What time I'm afraid I will trust in thee. And it would bring me calm and it would bring me comfort, even as a little girl. And it still brings me calm. And then for God, 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. He wants us to have a sound mind. And that's how I feel when you are in control of your emotions. your mind is sound. When you let your emotions overtake you and control you, you no longer have a sound mind because your mind is being controlled by those emotions and by those fears. So this is a super important thing for me. I want to be in control of my emotions. I don't want my emotions to control me. If that makes sense. So I really, it's a big deal to me. So that's why I wanted to touch on this. That's why I don't like being fearful and anxious over things like what's going to happen in a couple days. Are we going to get this baby to flip? Am I going to get to have her naturally? Am I going to have a C-section? I just want to accept what's coming because I know that a lot of the outcome will depend on my mindset and my frame of mind. And whatever happens, God is in control. He knows what's going to happen. He knows the end of it. And so I'm placing it in his hands, this week. So, and I know it's hard not to worry as moms, but we have to take control of our mind and our thoughts and conquer our fears and conquer our emotions. I'm a work in progress in this. My husband has definitely helped balance me throughout the years. Having good friends help me. They talk me off the ledge if I'm anxious about something. They tell me it's going to be all right. Reading the Bible, quoting scriptures. I have found that most battles begin and end in the mind. There are some legitimate fears, but there are also irrational ones. And we need to give both over to God. Whether that comes to how we deal with people, how do we deal with personal attacks in our own lives? Are we going to let that consume us? Are we going to hand it over to God and let him deal with it? I found that is the best situation. God can deal with things so much better than me. God's way of dealing with it, his methods of dealing with it are so much better than mine. So throughout the years, I've learned that there's a lot. I like to be in control, but God has put me through some things, maybe so that I'm not so much in control. And so I can learn to hand the control over to him. And I like to have a sound mind. I don't like to live in fear. I don't like to live in worry. It's not fun. I don't want to become bitter over things that have happened in my life. So this is what I've done to kind of cope with different things that come up in my life. Is it professional? I have no idea. It's what works for me, though, and it's what keeps me balanced in my life. And obviously, we all think that we're balanced. Well, maybe some of us acknowledge that we're not, but I think I'm pretty balanced with how I interact with people or come across to people. I try to be anyways. So it's just stuff that I've incorporated in my own life. And yep, KJV, I've done that too. They said during the worst nights I had to just cling to the Lord Jesus and quote verses over and over. Yeah. Cassie, I do that with my kids sometimes too. When my husband's out of town, not all the kids, but they'll take turns sleeping in my bed. So you're a criminal. Maybe you should stop watching those criminal shows if it's going to get to you like that. I'm telling you. And good verse, KJV. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Remember, every battle begins and ends in the mind. And God knew that. And there are so many verses. I challenge you, do a study this week. Do a study of everything. Every time it talks about thinking on things or the mind or, our thoughts, go through and see what he has to say about your thoughts and your mind and what goes through your mind. So it would be a good study. Yep. So that's funny, Kirsten. But I hope you all have a good week. I'm hoping I won't have a show next week because I'm hoping I'll have a baby this week. So pray she gets flipped. If she gets flipped, there will be a baby this week. So if not, I will probably have the show again on Monday because I would not be, unless I go into labor on my own, which I usually do around 38 weeks. So I won't have a baby till next Wednesday then. So we'll see what happens. Just keep me in your prayers. Keep Hannah in your prayers. And yeah, we'll see what happens. KJV, good idea. Share what you want in the GLS group. I love the Gently Led Sisters group. You guys are great on there, asking questions, sharing things. I love it. So yeah, we should share verses with thoughts in our minds and all that on the GLS group. That's a good idea. So if you haven't yet, join that on Facebook. Like, share, comment on this video. That always helps the algorithm. And we will see you, hopefully, not next week, but we'll see. So have a good week, guys. Bye.